Hello, my name is Pavel and welcome back to my channel. I grew up not speaking English, and that means throughout my entire childhood, I missed out on a lot of iconic movies that are English, because by the time I moved over to Ireland, I was learning English, and that just meant I didn't understand everything in English and blah blah blah, all that sort of stuff. Because I remember being like 10 or 11 and trying to watch Lord of the Rings in English, and it just went over my head. I just understood nothing, and that means I missed out on a lot of iconic movies in my early teenage years because my English was just not great, and maybe that's just the excuse that I'm using. But if you can't tell in my videos, sometimes my English kind of sucks in the way I phrase things, and again, that's just a bit of an excuse, I guess. I missed out on a lot of iconic movies such as Lord of the Rings, Final Destination, aka the movie that we're going to be watching today for the first time. It is embarrassing. I've been speaking English fluently for many years, and I still haven't watched this movie, and I don't even know entirely what this movie is about, and it is embarrassing. I think this movie is about people escaping death and then death coming after them in creative ways. So people die in very unique ways throughout the movie, I think, and in very fun ways. I know nothing about this movie aside from that, and I'm probably wrong, but I'm extremely excited to watch Final Destination for the first time, and that's exactly what I'm going to be doing in this video. What are my predictions? My predictions are we're going to have some fun deaths, which is like a weird sentence to say, but I want people to die in unique ways, in fun ways, and this is like an early 2000s movie, so I think it's gonna be like really corny, really dramatic, and really like fun dialogue, and again, fun deaths, and that's what I'm here for, and I'm gonna watch it. Let's go watch Final Destination 1. I was gonna make a video where I watch all of the movies, but let's just start off with the first one and see how we get on, so let's go. Okay, hello, I have just finished finally watching Final Destination 1. I had a little bit of a dilemma. It was streaming on Amazon Prime, but it didn't have subtitles, and if you know me, I'm so picky with my subtitles, and I needed them, and basically, it just took me a while to find a stream with subtitles, but basically, I feel like I've said basically so many times. I'm holding the microphone because it just won't sit on this, and my plant beside me looks like it's dead, so hopefully it's not, but I'm finally finished watching Final Destination 1, and that was extremely enjoyable. It was exactly what I predicted. It was people escaping death and then death coming after them, and I really enjoyed that. I feel like I'm jumping the gun a little bit with my review here, so let's go through my notes and let's talk about Final Destination 1, what I thought about it, what it was actually about. Let's talk about the deaths. Let's see if there were good deaths, if they were bad, because honestly, with a movie like this, you're not here for the dialogue, you're not here for the very interesting characters, you're not here for the you're not here for the cinematography. You're here to see, do people die in an entertaining way, which sounds insane whenever you say it to a camera, but it is true. That is what these movies are. You want to watch people die in a fun way, and did this movie hold up? Well, we're going to see whenever we're going to be talking about Final Destination 1. So what is Final Destination 1 about? Well, it is about a character called Alex and his schoolmates who are going on a trip to Paris for school. Did I say school? Yes, they're going on a school trip to Paris. So once Alex gets on the plane, he has a very detailed and realistic vision of the plane crashing, of everybody around him dying. But before this, as he's going to the airport, he keeps getting reminded of death, and he's slowly starting to freak out. So once Alex gets on the plane, he kind of like sits down, he fiddles with his table and it breaks, and he just gets very paranoid. So then comes this vision. What happens in this vision? He sees the plane go up and then right back down because everybody dies, the plane explodes, and it is a catastrophic event. And basically, he freaks out. He wakes up from this very realistic dream, and he's like, fuck this. I'm getting off the plane because I do not want to die, and his few of the schoolmates get off as well. I think there's 6 of them. The rest of the passengers on the plane stay on because they're like, why would we get off? The plane's not going to crash. He's just being hysterical. So they all get off the plane, and then they're all like freaking out. They're really angry because they can't go to Paris. And guess what happens? Well, in a very awful looking CGI shot, the plane goes up and goes like, and explodes, and all the characters are like, whoa, how did you know that, Alex? And then cue the FBI, who are like, did you plan this? Did you plan for the plane to crash? And obviously he didn't. So here comes the general theme of this movie, and that theme is escaping death. Alex and his friends, his schoolmates, his classmates, whatever you want to call them, they have escaped death, and that was one thing you cannot do by the rules of this movie. You cannot escape death because death is going to follow you, and so that is what this movie is about. All of these characters are living their life, overcoming the fact that all of their friends and classmates have just died. Alex feels like a pariah. He feels excluded because he's getting blamed for the death. He has this guilt, but also every other character is just very paranoid, because slowly as the movie goes on, all of the characters are slowly getting killed off in quite fun ways. But before we talk about that, let me talk about this like fear of flying and this kind of like teenage dread that some people have. Well, I had as a kid anyway. I remember being a kid and going on the plane for the first time. As I mentioned, I'm Lithuanian. I used to fly from Ireland to Lithuania all the time, and I used to be so scared whenever I was on the plane. I used to look at everything. Every time there was like a little rattle, just everything, I used to be so scared that the plane's going to crash. This is a realistic fear that people have of flying, because whenever you go in the air, you're scared you're going to die. And I feel like this movie works well in that regard. It feels realistic to an extent. You watch this character of Alex feel so scared being on a plane, and his big fear actually comes true and the plane crashes. And I feel like audiences in 2000 were watching this and they were like, whoa, this is terrifying. But as the movie progresses, as I said, each character dies off slowly, because Alex later on in the movie figures out that there's a pattern of death that was meant to occur in the flight, but they escaped death. So what are these deaths and what happens to these characters? Well, let's go through these deaths. So the first character that gets killed off is called Ted. He's in the bathroom, he's shaving, and he's just, like taking care of himself. He's gonna shave, he's gonna have a shower, he's just using the bathroom. And slowly underneath the bathroom, water starts to spill out. And as this water is spilling out from underneath the toilet, Alex is standing near a bath because I think he's like taking clothes down or something like that, and he slips, and the bath cord or the shower cord wraps around his neck, and he slips into the bath, and the ground is really slippy, and he's being choked, and he can't breathe, and he can't stand up because the ground is really slippy, and he dies. He dies from suffocation. Obviously, when all this happens, the feds are like, hey, Alex, why did you go kill Todd? You did that. Or wait, no, the father of Todd is like, Alex, you should feel ashamed because you just killed my son, because he, well, indirectly killed my son because he felt so shit after everything that happened on the way to Paris. As a death, it's fine. It's very hilarious. It's not believable, but it's realistic enough to the point that they're able to make 5 more movies or 6 more movies or 4 more movies, however many movies there are, and kind of make it more unrealistic. But this is a standard that's kind of like, this is kind of realistic enough. So as a death, it was fine. Did it look hilarious because it was filmed in 2000? It did. It looked very funny, but I'm not gonna lie, I really enjoyed it. After the first death, I was like, ooh, okay, I'm looking forward to this being over the top, insane killing. And did it get better from that? The second death was very meh. So the second death happens to the character of Terry. Terry and everybody else that has survived and are alive are all at like outside of a cafe because Alex is speaking to his friend and blah blah blah, all that sort of stuff. I also forgot to say, this movie sets up these characters as just very, very generic characters. You have that like shy girl, you have that couple that are just over the top obsessed with each other. Then you have, ooh, Jesus, my camera just fell. Wait. Excuse me. Before my camera decided, well, that was my fault. I kicked my camera. So before I was saying we have very generic characters, and it works because, hey, you're here not for character development. You're here to just watch people die. And so they're all standing outside of a coffee shop. And basically, out of nowhere, you can kind of feel it's going to happen. But Terry's standing there, and the next second, guess what happens? Terry gets knocked by a bus. You don't really see anything, and you don't, like, you see nothing, and it's kind of funny because you don't really see the characters kind of, like, feel upset over that. Because whenever Todd dies, they're like, oh, wow. And when, like they're very upset, and when everybody else dies, they're very upset. But whenever it happens to Terry, I feel like they just kind of, like, don't really regard the fact that she's dead. And they just don't really seem to care, which I found kind of interesting. The next death is my favorite death out of the entire movie, I think, and it happens to I forget, Lawson. Oh my gosh, I forget her name. It basically happens to the teacher. I forget her name, but I'm going to put it on the screen. So she is at home. She's just like, fuck this. I'm done living in this town. I'm leaving because there's just too much happening and I need to escape. She just feels a lot of guilt and she's packing because she's moving away. And as she's packing, she's making tea and she's just getting like really paranoid because a lot of these characters are obviously paranoid. Everybody has already died and more people are dying around them. So she's paranoid and she's like, you know what, fuck this. I do not want tea. I want vodka and ice. So she makes herself some vodka, and as she's pouring it into the mug kind of cracks, which I feel like is interesting to point out. A lot of these deaths are liquid related. which I don't know if it's trying to say something or not, but a lot of these deaths are liquid related. But anyway, she's making her vodka, she puts some ice in, she's walking over with a mug in her hand, and as she's walking, the mug is obviously broken, as I've said, and the vodka spills onto the computer, and it causes the computer to explode, a shard from the screen to go into her neck, and then after the computer explodes again, it lights up the vodka, her house goes on fire, the knives fall on top of her because she's on the ground, like she has like this thing stuck in her throat, like this big piece of glass, she's choking, and she falls onto the floor, she's trying to reach for a cloth, and as she reaches for the cloth, a load of knives fall all over her body. It is absolutely over the top, and I love it. I am so here for this, like absolutely perfect. And I was like, wow, this is, if all the deaths are going to be like this, I am so here for this, because I absolutely loved it. And that's also where, like, I'm not really going to the fact that Alex is always present at these scenes, and the police are very skeptical of him, and they're like, why are you everywhere? Because he tells the police, he's like, hey, I figured it out, these deaths are going to happen because we escaped death, and it's going to happen in this order, the police don't care, blah blah blah, whatever. That is like a narrative throughout the story. We're not really here to talk about that. We're here to talk about fun death that is fun. We are here for good deaths. So 3 deaths in, everything is getting intense. All the characters are getting very, very, very paranoid. So we have 4 characters left, I think it is, and they're in a car with a man called Billy and Carter, and then we have Alex and the girl that I cannot remember her name. So they're in the car and they're all freaking out. They're like, okay, who's death? Who's next? Alex, tell me. Alex, who is next? Tell me, I want to know. And Alex is like, I'm not going to tell you. So we have Carter freaking out because he thinks it's him. So he stops his car in the middle of some train tracks, and he's like, okay, fuck this, I'm not waiting for death to happen. I'm just gonna kill myself practically by sitting in this car and on these rail tracks, and the train is gonna hit me, and I'm just gonna fuck up the order. And it turns out that Alex got a little bit wrong, and he messed up the order, and it was actually meant to be Billy. So as Carter's sitting in the car, everyone's like, get out, no, don't kill yourself, it's stupid, blah 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 blah. They drag Carter out of the car, and the car is crushed by the train, and underneath the train there's a piece of metal. So they're all talking, they're like, oh my gosh, okay, let's just breathe, let's figure this all out. And this piece of metal, because of the shaking of the train, like underneath the train, the piece of metal flies and cuts Billy's head off, which is he's Stifler from American Pie, which I absolutely loved. I was watching it, I was like, no, don't kill Stifler off. So as his head, it's funny because you're like, okay, one of these characters is definitely about to die, but I don't know how. And then you see this piece of metal just absolutely fly, take his head off, and it's just so, like, what I absolutely loved, it was just how direct this was. It just literally, bam, his head is off, and they're like, oh fucking shit. So then what happens after that? I cannot talk. Well, next we have our final death. We see the girl, I keep forgetting her name, and Alex think that it's going to be like, we see them being extremely ultra paranoid, and they think they're both going to like die, and they, since I've mentioned that Alex messed up the order, they don't know who's going to die, blah blah blah, and the girl is about to die, and Alex is like, no, I'm going to sacrifice myself so we can interrupt the death's plan, and then we're gonna escape and we're gonna live, because I'm gonna sacrifice myself for you so you and Carter can live, and Alex is gonna die. So he gets electrocuted, and the car explodes at the same time. I don't actually remember which thing kills him. I think it's not a little car, it's a car, I think, that explodes and electrocutes him. And long story short, the 3 characters live, and they finally make it to Paris 6 months later. And they're like, okay, we kind of like cheated death again, we're fine, nothing's gonna impact us. And Alex is like, 6 months later, he's still thinking about these things, and he pulls out the drawings, and he's like, oh wait, I think it was actually meant to be me. All this is happening while they're in Paris, and Alex starts to really freak out because he's like, shit, I'm gonna die, I do not want to die. And everything around him is freaking him out. Like, we see like glass explode, a bus nearly hit him, and then a sign almost hits him, but it misses him, and Carter is the one that saves his life. But Carter stands up, and the sign just hits him, and he dies. So the characters that are left at the end of the movie are the girl, which I cannot fucking think of her name because I'm stupid, and then we have Alex. So there are all the deaths. We have that massive sign in Paris that hits him, and it just, boom, he just disappears and dies straight away. And as a death, it was fine. I felt like a lot of the deaths, aside from the shower one and the one with the vodka in the hands, were just very quick, and I really didn't like that, because this entire movie is centered around the premise of people escaping death. and then death coming for them. And with that, I kind of wanted death to be really evil, as strange as that sounds. I wanted it to really like make them suffer, make them realize, oh, you think you can escape me? Do not think twice. And I think it's fine to have a death that's very, very quick and sudden once, but whenever you have it 3 more times, it gets really, really annoying. But I also really like the fact that it explores guilt, but also poses a question towards the audience of, what if that was you? What if you thought death is after you? Imagine how paranoid you would be. Like everywhere you turn, every corner, just everything just absolutely freaks you out. I also really like that this movie sets up the idea that death is predetermined, and when it's meant to be, it's meant to be. You're gonna die. You can't really like figure it out and can't really escape it, and if you try to escape it, death is gonna come right after your ass. It just made me reflect on when I was like 10 and sitting on a plane and just thinking, yep, I'm gonna die, and it just brought me back to this time. And for a 2000s movie, I thought this was absolutely incredible, and it came out during the period of when Saw did, during that like dark kind of like scary period of like movies like that, if you know what I mean. And honestly, I liked it a lot more than Saw. I thought it worked really well. It's something that you can definitely watch with your friends and just have an absolutely great time with, because it's just fun. And maybe I'll watch the other 4 and like 5, because I know there's another one coming out, I don't know when, sometime soon. But in general, I really enjoyed Final Destination. It was absolutely great. Deaths were meh, but I feel like as a first movie, as like this foundation for the rest of the franchise, it works really, really well. So cool. So cool. Would you like me to watch the rest of the Final Destination movies? If you would like me to do that, let me know, and I gladly will, because if it's anything like this and it becomes even more bizarre, I am so there, and I would absolutely love to do that. But that's everything I have to say about Final Destination. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.